$100 billion. That is not a valuation. That is not a market cap. That is not a projection on a slide deck. That is concrete, steel, land, a physical footprint spreading across the American Southwest, square mile by square mile. Right now, in Abilene, Texas, the largest artificial intelligence infrastructure project in human history is being constructed. Brick by brick, cable by cable, gigawatt by gigawatt. They call it Stargate, and Microsoft is not just participating in it. They are at the center of it. You think of Microsoft and you think of Office, Excel, Teams, Windows, software. Comfortable, familiar, safe. But the company quietly building a shadow over the entire global economy is not that company anymore. It hasn't been for some time, and what it is becoming, most people still cannot see. 3 Mile Island. The name alone carries weight. The site of the most serious nuclear accident in American history. Cooling towers that became a national symbol. Not of progress, but of catastrophe. Dormant for years, fenced off, forgotten. In early 2026, Microsoft restarted it. Not metaphorically. Not as a brand exercise. They signed a 20-year power purchase agreement and brought a reactor back online, specifically to feed their data centers. A software company. The same company that makes Excel and Word is now operating as a nuclear utility. They do not simply consume power from the grid, they have secured a piece of the grid itself, long-term, contractually, irrevocably. Artificial intelligence is not an abstract concept. It is a deeply physical thing. It runs on electricity, massive, unrelenting, industrial-scale electricity that dwarfs anything the consumer internet ever demanded. The data center is the new factory floor. And the power line is the new supply chain. Whoever controls the power controls the intelligence. Microsoft just moved to own both. Without the grid, there is no AI. And Microsoft now owns the grid. January 2026. Microsoft launches the Maia 200, built on 3-nanometer architecture, one of the most advanced chips ever put into commercial production. And it was not built to be sold, it was built for Microsoft, exclusively, to run Microsoft's AI workloads inside Microsoft's data centers, on Microsoft's terms. For years, NVIDIA was untouchable. Microsoft was their single largest customer, billions of dollars a year flowing out of Redmond directly into Santa Clara. The Maia 200 changes that calculation permanently. When you build your own chip, you eliminate the NVIDIA tax, the margin premium you surrender to a supplier with leverage. You control your own compute costs. You control your own roadmap. You control your own destiny. Microsoft is no longer just NVIDIA's biggest customer. They are becoming their most credible threat. In Silicon Valley, they call this vertical integration. Control the chip, control the cloud, control the model, control the output. Microsoft just locked in step 1, and they did it quietly, while everyone was watching the GPU shortage. Now here is where the story becomes invisible. And invisible is where the most durable power lives. Microsoft Fabric, OneLake, 2 product names you have almost certainly never heard in casual conversation. But if you work inside a Fortune 500 company, you are almost certainly already living inside them. Every Word document, every Excel model, every Teams meeting transcript, every email thread, all of it, automatically, is being funneled into a unified data repository called OneLake. And once that data is inside OneLake, Microsoft's AI layer, Copilot, begins to operate on it. Summarizing, predicting, generating, learning the patterns of how your company thinks. The Fortune 500 believes it is buying a productivity subscription. What they are actually doing is feeding a machine. Their most sensitive intelligence, corporate strategy, internal forecasts, all of it flowing continuously into Microsoft's infrastructure. This is not a service. This is an intelligence tax. And every automated thought inside corporate America is now being processed through Microsoft's toll booth, whether the CFO knows it or not. Azure grew 40% year over year. But what Wall Street loves even more than the growth rate is the moat, the thing that makes the growth defensible, permanent. Enter Microsoft Purview. Once a corporation runs its compliance infrastructure through Microsoft, its regulatory audit trails, its legal hold systems, leaving becomes an institutional crisis, not a procurement decision. We are talking about a migration cost that starts at $100 million. The shadow isn't just technological, it is legal, it is contractual, it is woven into the governance structures of the world's largest organizations. Microsoft does not need to win every market, they just need to make leaving unthinkable, and they have succeeded. So where does this end? The dominant narrative is that we are building smarter applications. Efficiency gains. That framing is not just incomplete, it is dangerously misleading. What Microsoft is constructing, with $100 billion of capital and a 20-year contract on nuclear power, is something that has no modern precedent. They are building intellectual electricity, the infrastructure that runs thought itself. A century ago, the corporation that controlled the electrical grid controlled the industrial century. Every factory, every hospital was dependent on an infrastructure it could not replicate and could not escape. The grid was leverage. Microsoft is building that for cognition, for the automated decision-making layer that every institution will depend upon to function. The shadow is not a conspiracy. It is a calculation. By the time the world realizes Microsoft has moved from software to sovereign infrastructure, the transition will be complete. We are no longer talking about who has the best chatbot. We are talking about the ownership of the baseline intelligence required to run a modern civilization. $100 billion in concrete, a nuclear reactor brought back from the dead, a custom silicon moat that stretches to the edges of the global network. The question is no longer whether Microsoft will own the intelligence layer of the global economy. The question is what happens when they do. The shadow is not hidden, it is simply too large to see all at once, and by the time you can see it, you will already be inside it. Subscribe to DataVault Studio for more forensic breakdowns of the invisible infrastructure running the modern world. Because in the age of the silicon moat, the real story isn't who has the best AI, it's who owns the grid.